Hey, Sam. How are you?
Good, good. Yourself?
Good. I cannot complain. Well, I could complain. It's starting to get cold in Ireland again after a little heat wave. But apart from that, I'm all good. How about you? How's
Good,
life in
good, good,
Dubai?
good. Just been trying to get this demo up and ready for today. Been fiddling around with Helm a lot, so been looking forward to kind of like
Well,
showcase what we've been playing around with.
ho- hopefully it'll impress us a bit with this one now. Fingers crossed it all works. I know these things. Anytime we go to do anything live like this, something always fails. That's it. That's just personal experience. No matter how many times you try something, it just on the day. I think it's the pressure. It all amounts up and it gets to you. But
it's
fingers crossed. I think you're a bit more of a pro than I, so hopefully it'll all go smoothly this time.
cheers for that, but not sure it's entirely true. But I think I'm just trying to keep calm no matter what happens in all situations.
Perfect. So
Um,
this week we're thinking we're going to cover Helm, kind of more manually building your Helm charts and that sort of thing. Would you like to give us more of an intro to what you're going to be covering today with this, Sam?
yeah, so basically, normally we basically like what we did last time was we had a look at so on the second part we had a look at Helm charts and Monocular, and the focus was more on how to kind of deploy applications that were pre-built already from Helm repositories. And I think today
Cool.
what we're going to do is we're going to deep dive a little bit into, you know, how is like Helm chart basically built? What is it composed of? So we'll just look at the different files that a Helm chart is composed of, basically. And in particular, we're
Okay,
going to
cool.
look at, I think, config maps, secrets,
Yeah.
which are part of Kubernetes, and kind of see how that relates to Helm charts. I think basically from the the research I've been doing recently, it's just a lot of people are asking a lot of questions on how to deal with um, yeah with secrets and config maps and how to use them. And there are a few good blog posts out there, but I think this is maybe something we could take a look at.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I know it's something I've looked a little bit about myself. I find it hard to get my head around, so hopefully you'll be able to shed some light for all of us, to Sam, on this, on how the YAML files everything fit together to build your charts manually. Because like obviously the repository is really really good. There's a lot out there. A lot of people are contributing to the kind of the open source ones, the repos you can pull down of different charts. So, but for a lot of people, if you're in industry, you're going to have to build some stuff for yourself. So it'd be great to kind of cover a bit of that, and you can teach us all a thing or two as on this.
Yeah, well, it's really just sharing a little bit of the things I've picked up recently. So not so much teaching here. It's really just I think sharing a small aspect.
Okay, cool. That sounds
So
good.
just to keep your expectations low, right? I think that's important.
Uh, Honestly, I've got really high expectations. The pressure's on, so I'm not gonna lie.
Cheers, Brian. All right. So let's jump into it. And Brian, let me know if you should be able to see my screen here actually. So you know what? We'll start with just a quick recap. So basically, to get started with this stuff here, you need, well, here we go. You need Helm installed. Um, you need Helm installed on Mac. It's pretty straightforward. I think it's like brew install Helm, I think, or Kubernetes Helm. You need the kubectl as well. Um, when you run Helm for the first time, and we're not going to do that, we already like went through this in a previous episode, but you just write Helm in it, and that will install basically initialize Helm locally, and it'll install Tiller on the server side of Kubernetes. It's what it uses to kind of like process the YAML and all of that. Server side part of Helm, you could say. So that's really it. So it's kind of like a prerequisite that you have Helm in it already. Now let's jump into one of the charts. There's a really nice example here that I'm going to walk through. And here we go. You should be able to see my desktop now. So this is basically a Helm chart here. It is composed of, I think the first interesting file is basically the chart with YAML. It basically just describes, I'm just increasing the size of the font here. So this basically just describes the API version, the app, the description of the actual chart, and you have like a version of the application as well, and the app name. And you're going to see this like throughout the whole demo, like the app name being referred to. So that's kind of straightforward. Now the next part is the templates. The template is really no, actually let's jump to the values. The values is basically a single file which shows you it's basically all the values that you need to use. They're all central in one location. So to begin with, we have defined like the values for the images we want to use. So basically the different containers that we have that we're dealing with, and for each container, basically the repository, the tag that we want to pull, the storage, and we're doing that for all of them. You can also define things like replicas. So basically you're just setting, it's basically just like all the parameters, all the variables that you have, we put that in a values file. And then we also have two other blocks. One is a config map and one is a secret. So it's basically all the environment variables that we want inside of the containers. What we can do, so we're not defining what configurations are going to what container yet or pod. We're simply just saying, these values, these are part of a config map, and that's it. So, and we're not really even saying that this should be in Kubernetes yet. We're just simply setting up we're just defining the values right here. That's basically it. Now, in Kubernetes, there's something called config map and there's something called secret. This is obviously, we wanted to map to that at one point. Secrets are treated a little bit differently than normal config parts. They are typically encoded with base 64. And this is why they're secrets. And hopefully in the future there'll probably be some more features in Kubernetes around how to deal with secrets. And this is the reason we're like differentiating. So basically they just obfuscate it and that's it. So they're not stored as clear text. That's really it. Now, if we go to templates, let's take the MySQL deploy to begin with. So here we have a template, and these are like Go templates, which basically uses some of the data that we have there. Certain things you'll see here is basically so this is basically, first of all, this is a deployment description, or when you have these different files in part of your Helm chart, there's like a deployment. You can have a deployment file. You can have like a config map type. You can have a secret type. So depending on what you're doing, you can also have the like a volume, persistent volume claim. So this is if you want like the persistent volumes, and there are also services. So basically, you have all these different types of let's call it can't find the word now, Brian. Not sure if you remember the word for these different types that we're dealing with here. Not constructs, but yeah.
I'm trying to look at yours. I'm only seeing your screen as a delay. So I'm not exactly what you're pointing.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm not sure what you're pointing to at the moment.
Yeah, fair enough. It's basically like in Kubernetes you have the different things you can I think it's constructs or yeah. Um,
Yeah, I believe it is constructs if I know what you're referring to.
yeah, and then there's the deployment as well. So basically, what we've done is
Yeah.
for each you can say tier in this like application or workload that we have here, we're basically defining these different types, and we have multiple files for each. So for MySQL, we'll have the deployment file, we'll have the config map, we'll have the secrets, we'll have the actual persistent volumes, we'll have the service definition, and we'll have the and that's it. And you'll see we'll have something similar for the Rails. So in this case, this is like a booking engine that I'm working with at the moment. So we'll have something similar for the application tier, which is the Rails. So and this is where you'll see all the data and the values being used. So if we go back to, let's say, the MySQL config map, what we're doing here is we're saying that we're specifying some data that needs to be defined, and we're telling it this is the data basically: MySQL user, MySQL database, and MySQL root host. And we want you to get that from values, so that's the value file. env, that's basically just the path inside the YAML file. Config map. So what we end up with is basically going to the value file, env config map, and then basically finding the value that's needed. And we just do that for basically all the things that we need for basically all the config parameters. What will happen then is these will be exposed in the container that we're dealing with. Now, you notice that sometimes you can pipe things and you can add a function, and it's part of the Golang template. So basically here, if there's certain things that we want in quotes, or if you want to treat this with yeah, whatever, you can actually add things to the values in line. For example, for secrets, so this is the secrets file, and we're doing something similar. Again, value, environment, secret. So this is really just the path where to get this value from. So again, from the values file, it's getting it. It kind of makes it really easy for us to have all our values in a single file, which doesn't have to be, uploaded anywhere. But at the build time, which we'll look into it in a second, at the build time, that's when it will use all of these values. And here, what we're doing is we're basically encoding it with base64 because that's expected. And what Kubernetes will do is it will make sure to decode it before it passes it on to the container later on. So if you don't do this, you'll probably end up with like you'll end up with a wrong password in your production because you're sending it something which wasn't encoded, and Kubernetes encodes it or decodes it, sorry, when it passes it onto the container. So this is really important. Now let's get on to our Rails environment. So for the Rails environment, again, the name is coming from, so you see here as like we have the demo of the Rails end, that name. Now the Rails end environment is a variable as well, which basically it's a generated name. So depending on what I specify when I deploy my Helm app, and you'll see that in a second, it will basically change. So this will make the whole deployment really flexible because all over the place this is being referred to. So I can say, for example, Helm upgrade staging, or Helm upgrade testing or production, and it will automatically use that environment variable all over the application. Again, so here again we're referring to values which from the value file, but then you'll see here at certain places we're using the word template and function template, and we're just referring to demopt.mysql name. So for example, the host, we don't know and we don't want to know what the IP is in advance. So what happens is when it's building, when it's like starting up the cluster or these containers on Kubernetes, it will automatically insert the actual host name of MySQL here runtime. So you don't have to know that in advance. um, which is also something which is really nice. And it's kind of similar to when you have using host names in Docker Compose. Brian, does it make sense so far? Any questions
Yeah,
in the
you're making
chat or
perfect
anything?
sense. Nothing on the chat so far. I'm following you. You're pretty. You seem to know your stuff pretty well. This is turning into a bit of a lesson. I should have brought a notepad and everything here with me. Uh, but
It's
it's great
been
stuff so far. Thank you.
yeah, I've kind of been pushed into this. My brother has he's just built this travel booking engine, and he's basically told me, oh, you're messing around with containers and da da da. Can you not have a look at like this Rails app, how you can like kind of convert it into Kubernetes, so we can run it on containers on Kubernetes instead. Um, because he's been wanting additional environments, and he's running on VMs right now, and it's kind of like it's a hassle for him to create new environments using VMs, because there's so many configuration parameters and stuff.
Yeah.
And also with something like a travel engine, they have a lot of so as you see here, like the hotel beds in Arabia and all of this travel port. So he needs to connect to a lot of different APIs. And one of the things that they need to do is basically they need to get their IPs whitelisted before they can create new environments. So it's a bit of a hassle.
Okay.
They need to like either reserve a lot of IPs and then whitelist them, but that's also they don't really want to do that. So even for testing, not just production, but even for test environments, they have to have whitelisted IPs. So obviously they could create multiple VMs and then proxy all the calls through a proxy or something which is whitelisted. That's one way, but another way is to actually just have if everything running in a cluster, and you just basically have the cluster, the IPs whitelisted for the workers. I think, or the gateway, then they can basically run, especially in containers, they'll be able to run multiple environments on the same kind of VMs. So I think it's a much more
it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, and plus it'll make it much easier for them to create environments, because they can just they'll just spin them up.
You get more technical questions from your family than I do. I tend to guess, will you fix the printer, or will you fix my iPhone? So at least you get lucky and you get to learn something from your family's questions. Whereas I just have the kind of basics, and they're like, oh, but you did computer science in college. You should know how to do this. I've never used a printer that much.
No, I've changed enough drives and tried to like undelete and unerase enough computers for various people. I've stopped doing that totally. Like I refer them to the local support. I look up someone on the net and I'm like, you know what? There's a guy there locally. That has a shop. Please go there and get your computer fixed. It's only close family that I even look at things
for me. I think it's TeamViewer was the worst invention in the world, where I can remotely do people's laptops. Which kind of killed me a bit.
Really?
I have no excuse now.
Yeah, it is. It can be very time consuming to do support for friends and family. But this one is okay. This one's good. I took this on. So basically, So we have the secrets. We have the config maps. Now, let's have a look at where all this ends up. And this is kind of similar for the rest, for Redis and Puma, etc. This is really it. Now, what else would we like to look at here? Let's try and go ahead and look at how this is actually deployed. So we have all the files here. So basically, and I'll share this repo. This is I actually didn't build all of this from scratch. I found someone who actually did like a really, really nice job, and I kind of just continued working on it a bit. What he's done, what we have here is basically there's a make file which with a few different tasks. you can either use these makefiles or you can actually just use the actual commands. So one of the first things we want to do is kind of like export the Minikube IP. I'm using Minikube here in this case. And we're also generating an SSL certificate locally, which we want to use. The SSL certificate is not part of the values. I could create it and put it part of the values, but I'm not. I'm leaving this as something that can be done on the fly, just in case the common name changes for the environment. So let's run these bits here, and all of these are actually, like I said, in part of the make in the make file. It's just called make kubectl create secret. So we'll run that. It's just to make it easier. So now we have we generated a certificate. We've created a secret in Kubernetes. So what we could do, I think, is say kubectl get secret. Here we go. And as you see, it's created here, demo at Puma TLS 14 seconds ago. Fantastic. Now we can go to the dashboard as well and have a look at what we have there. So let's go to the dashboard. Fantastic, and this time it actually works. And let's go to secrets and demo app TLS. This is the one 41 seconds ago. Here we go. And this is my certificates. Oh, you're actually not viewing my desktop. Let me just put on my... I need to share my desktop. 1 second. Brian, I think we spoke about this as well last time, right? About the whole being able to create certificates, but using instead of just using, like, say, let's scripts like I'm doing here, but having more built-in functionality into the API.
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking about this. To create your secrets and your credentials input, yeah.
So basically for tasks,
remember
like,
massively much about it.
Was that, sorry?
If I'm being honest. I remember what you're referring to, yeah. I think you went off on a massive tangent, knowing a lot more than I did. I got kind of left in the dust a little bit. But yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's up now.
So so this is yeah. So you should be able to see my screen now. So this is basically I'm just going to go back and do it again. So basically secrets, click on secrets, you see the demo app, Puma TLS, and here you have the actual secrets that we're dealing with. So far so good. Now, if we want to, the next step would be typically to build this Helm chart. So again, we also have a makefile for this, and I'll promise I'll share this later. I mean, you can already find it on net, but I'll share it. So if we go to the README here, what you'll see is initially, you obviously need to run Helm in it if you haven't already installed Tiller on your Kubernetes cluster. When we want to install the Helm chart, all we need to say is Helm upgrade, and then the environment. It could be testing, production, and this is actually the beauty here, Brian. Basically, like I said, now if they want to create multiple environments in the future, all they need to do is basically Helm upgrade and like put another environment here. That's all they need to do. As long as all the values are there, etc., in the value files.
So much easier.
This is the only thing that needs to be different. Yeah, absolutely. Whereas today, I mean, if you need to create a new environment, you'd have to clone the VMs, you'd have to go and fiddle around with the configuration parameters, etc. If there's so many moving parts. DNS.
Exactly.
Creating DNS.
So much easier. As you're saying, the whitelisting of IPs as well, anything, it just makes life so much easier for them.
Yeah. So, but before we do this, let's just assume that we haven't actually built. This actually assumes that you have built a Docker image. So I already have a Docker image built. Docker image ls. So you'll see here my demo app is already built. It'll take some time, and you can see here I have different versions of it. Now let's just imagine that I want to build a new one, and it's going to be 0.09. So what I would do is basically go to my Helm chart, and I'll bump up the version here to 0.09 and save that. And I'll do the same with in the values. Remember, I have my Rails app here, and it says repository demo app. So this is actually, this image here is a local image. It's not pushed anywhere. It's a local image that I have, and save that as well. Now, so what we need to do is we need to build a new image, and I have it right here. So I'll just change the tag, and I'll run the task again from make, which is called minikube docker build. Now, if you just want to have a look at what that does, it's right here. It basically just it basically takes the sets the Docker environment for minikube, so the IP, etc. If it's not already set. It's typically if you have multiple, let's say you're running minikube or you're running a remote Kubernetes engine or whatever, you need to export these details somewhere, as into your terminal. So you need to support that. Eval just basically does that for you. The next step is to actually do the to build the actual image. So here basically what we do is we just check if that tag is already exists or not. If it doesn't exist, then we'll go ahead and build the app, and it just says Docker build, and it goes to the app directory and give it a tag name. As simple as that. So
sorry, Hassan, we just have a question in the chat there. I don't know if you can see it. By Dodson Jolly. Creating different versions using the same templates, won't the passwords remain the same as well?
So what you can do is, that's a really good question.
Some people are saying they can't. Some people are saying they can't see the console at the moment. By the way.
Yeah, I just changed it now. Sorry, my mistake. I'll just go back and show what I just did here. Okay, let's go back. So basically we spoke about we needed to build the Docker app. So I did a Docker image ls to show the different images that are built already, Docker app. So I have them here up until tag 8. So basically I'm saying the next tag I would build is tag 9. And I said I just have a make file that can do that, which is basically make, and then I give it a tag name and say minikube build. Now, I was just showing what that consists of, and it's basically just it takes and evaluates the minikube Docker env. That just gives us all the Docker parameters to the engine, and this is basically just points to my minikube cluster. It could also point to your cluster in the cloud. The second part is I just search for, there's an if statement, so I'm searching for if I already have a tag that exists or not, just to, don't rebuild if it already exists. I could also have said, delete the existing tag if it exists and then rebuild. I mean, there's different ways of doing it. But really, I want to keep my old ones, so I don't want to rebuild on top of the old ones. And then basically just Docker build, so building the actual application. So I just go a few levels up, and then I add a tag and give it demo app and the tag name. So that was basically what we just went through, and I haven't built yet. So what you can do if you have multiple so production passwords and stuff which you don't want in your what's it called? So there's two ways of doing that. You can either in your values have, like, let's say env, and then kind of make like a prod env, etc. But that would and then use that as a let's say as a variable, to add that as a variable to go when to, what value to take. But I think maybe the preferred way is that you normally, not everyone want to store this anywhere. I mean, sometimes you have a build machine, let's say, a laptop, system admin, whatever, and where he has these like values locally or something. You could simply change the value file. So if you have, let's say, prod values, test values, whatever, you can have multiple files of these and then just replace this file here with your production environment and just rerun it. So you would run everything and just replace this one file. Alternatively, which might be, maybe, I'm not sure if it's cleaner, but you can also pass, when you're building, so when you're building, you can pass on arguments to the build job, so inline. So you can say set env and then like set the environment variables. So you can there's two ways of doing it. Either have multiple value files, or you can just pass arguments for your production environment inline when you're doing the deployment. Sorry, not the build of the Docker file, the deployment. Then, by the way, there are no, these values don't get inside the image. The image, so that's the beauty of this, by the way. The image itself is actually ready to be run in multiple environments. It really does become immutable. So I can use the same image once it's built for any environment. All the values and all the Helm chart is not used at the moment I'm building. It's used when I'm deploying using Helm. Okay, I hope that answered it, Judson. So let's go ahead and build this. It might take a little bit of time, but let's just do it anyway. So I'm gonna say make tag 9. So this will check, and then I'll start building. And hopefully it'll use some of the existing layers that I have of the Docker image, so it doesn't do everything from scratch. Okay. And by the way, this image is a bit big. You might wonder what's there of 80 megs an application. It's basically because there's a lot of images inside the image which shouldn't be there, and the app needs to be fixed. That's my brother's headache. So good. So okay. So it's going to be copying this stuff. While it's doing this, let's just take a look at what's running. Okay, it's actually already built. Fantastic. So now we have tag 9 there. Great. Now, if I want to just have a quick look at what's on my Kubernetes cluster, I'll just say kube get pods. And you'll see that I have this, something that was deployed 10 hours ago. Funny enough, that was in the middle of the night. We don't want that, so I just want to delete all of that. So I'm going to do is I have a delete Helm job delete, and I'll show you what that does. So all it does is basically it deletes the release, and you can also just, it's just me being a bit lazy here. So it'll delete the release. The release is basically staging, so it'll delete that, and it will also delete the secrets, the TLS files that we created. So we need to create them again. Yeah, that's basically it. Now, when I'm going to deploy it in a second, this is what we'll be running: Helm upgrade, and then the release name. So here, like I said, I could just put in whatever name I want, and it will also. And this is basically the inline. Oh, maybe let me just make this a little bit slightly bigger. So, Judson, to your question about what if you have, let's say, staging test. There's certain values that are not the same, right? And there's two ways. There's another way to deal with it as well. You can also generate passwords
The
and
system
stuff.
has detected that a minimum number of lines are connected to this conference. Do you want to continue your meeting? Press 1 to confirm. If there is no response, the conference will end.
Did you hear that, Brian?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me just click 1 here so it doesn't end our conference call. We don't want that to happen.
Yeah, same, Martin. Yeah.
So you see, I think Brian, this is what he asked for, right? Like, how can you kind of pass on things if they in multiple environments? This is the second way, passing it inline. So when you do the Helm upgrade to install the chart, you can basically just set a variable there, which is specific thing. So in this case, it might be like a domain name or common name for the TLS certificate or whatever it is.
Awesome.
Okay, so let's clear this. So it's still running. It hasn't deleted these containers yet, which is not good. I can still go ahead and make any deployment. That's fine, even though I prefer to not to do that. Okay, I'll just stop that. I'll just give it a different name here instead. Let's call it testing. And we have a problem in Rails environment secret line. Wrong number of arguments. Yeah, so what I did before this, I went in and I created an old value file because I didn't want anyone to see my secrets, obviously. And I have corrupted the file along the way. So let's see if I can spot where it's corrected. Brian, can you spot any errors here? Do let me know if you spot anything. What line was it? Let's just check again. It says here.
As again, I'm a few lines behind here now. Or if you embed a minute behind, I'm seeing your screen. So
Rails env secret. Oh, it's Rails env secret. Actually, it's not even this one here. Rails env secret. Let's see. Let's go back and check. Oh, I see what I've done. Yeah. Okay. Rails env secret. I'm asking for something which is not there. Values. Here we go. Okay, let's try again. Release testing, installing it now, and there's another problem in Rails secret, wrong number of orgs on line 63.
See, as I said, Hassan, these things happen. They work well when you try it at home. When you go to do something live,
yeah, but
I
mean, I had to change my passwords, right? I couldn't just show those, so I had to. So I think I was just maybe like a bit aggressive when I was doing it.
Yeah.
OCI secret access.
For any of those interested fans, users, he said the easiest password that no one will ever guess is just the word password because it's so simple. I'm joking, by the way. It's not his password.
Imagine now you'll have hundreds of people doing that.
Yeah.
Taking the advice. Come on. wonder if it's the fact that I've used all these funny characters. No, that was secret. Let's try again. 1963. I guess I shouldn't have changed my password. I should have left them as they were so everyone could see them and just make this work instead. Okay, let's make this simpler instead. Let's just write 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. I think we should be there. Let's okay, great. It seems like it's working now. Fantastic. It seems to be working now. So this should be deploying it, and in the meanwhile, let's check the status of this here. Okay, so it's deleted the old ones, which I started before. It was just a bit slow, and I can see here 20 seconds ago it's now released these ones here. So this is really it. This is how you can basically create charts, deploy them, and yeah, bump up the value, bump up the version number, and yeah, carry on deploying them. I think maybe what we can cover in the next week, perhaps, because I can see it's already like 2:45, is things like how to do rolling updates, canary updates, and that sort of stuff with no downtime. Just some small maybe tips and tricks is so while these are running, you're always wondering what's going on inside of these containers. So I think a nice thing is, or one of the things that's been really useful for me is obviously the kubectl logs. Whoops.
Yeah.
Just to see what's going on there. So I can see, okay, it's about to run a DB setup bundle rake. It's a Rails thing. Great. Now, one of the things that might happen sometimes is, okay, stuff doesn't work or it doesn't run or whatever, and you need to access the actual container. So obviously you can access it. It's as well. If you're familiar with Docker, this is kind of similar with Kubernetes, kubectl exec -it, etc., and then just the name of the container. So in this case, let's take DB setup. Okay, so that one is not running, so let's do it with another one. Let's do it with sidekick perhaps. Yeah, here we go. Okay, that's just terminated. So because these containers, they restart, etc. So you have to obviously time it, or you can create a new one. Just use run instead. So you create a new container. But if you want to get into one of these containers, that's how you can do it. Now you can also do it through the dashboard. Let me just go back to the dashboard. So if I go to the dashboard here, I can see deployments. I can see testing demo app is running, or at least is kicked off. If I click it, I should be able to see the different images and containers. We have a replica set here, and we have the pods here, services, etc. So let's go into this pod here, the MySQL one, and as you see again, like the environment variables and all of that, everything that's picked up has been picked up from the value files that you see prod, etc., etc. I could also, choose to execute like a command into the container. I can also just watch the logs from here, if that's easier. So this is another way to do it. So I can see here that MySQL is actually up and running now, and starting. And I know, and by the way, like a lot of people have been talking about, like even myself including that, containers and persistency, etc., etc. I think with Kubernetes and also just with cloud in general and running Kubernetes or containers in the cloud with native support for the underlying infrastructure, so being able to create like block volumes, provision those and attach them to the containers, really makes it perfectly fine for doing persistent stuff. So in this case here, you can see here I have a persistent volume which has been attached to MySQL. Brian, anything else you think, or comments or ideas that you want to share around this?
No, I agree. It's great to have that, be able to attach the persistent volumes to containers. I know I've had a customer before I was talking to, they're trying to hold a database in a temporary file with a container, and it was just like, I don't know what you're doing. So it is very handy to have persistent volumes for MySQL or a database attached to your container. Obviously, it makes it much easier, because a lot of people are worried of what happens if my system scales down, I lose a lot of data, etc. So it is great to have that.
Awesome. I think one more thing to mention here. So certain applications, and I think this is more like from an application point of view. So certain applications have like, tasks where you need to run something in the beginning. Let's say a lot of frameworks, where you need to do, let's say, database migration, or you need to set up the database for the first time. And often it's not something that can happen multiple times. It's something that you just want to happen once, and that's it. And that's where like jobs are really good. So Kubernetes also has this thing here called like a job. I'm gonna call it a type, even though it's not a type; it's a constructor. Where you can actually create a container and run like a job a single time, and that's it. So it's more like for batch processing, or for like imagine we're setting up this Rails application. I want 2 replicas for my applications here, but I don't want both of them to start running DB migrations. So I can basically remove that task altogether from the application container. For example, if it's Rails, I don't want to run rake DB migrate, and instead what we'll do is basically put it in a separate definition called job, where all it does is starts up, runs DB migrate when everything else is set up, and terminates. So basically the jobs, you can see those on the jobs basically on the left side. So that's another thing that, again, if I want to see how it's going, and I'm sure that it's missing something right now. So that's I think that's it for now. I think we also way over time, so we should probably just call it a day. And next week, what do we have on the menu, Ryan?
Next week, I think we're going to cover the kind of continuous integration part, and that sort of things, and how you can continuously serve your application while making updates, etc. Because with these applications, you're constantly changing them, that sort of thing, and you want your customers to kind of have a good experience. So we'll be covering that side of things next week, and kind of having a look at Worker as a platform for doing this.
Great. Great. I guess the last thing to do with this would, for example, just be to actually just have a quick look at the when the deployment is done. Is just say kubectl get ingress, and you have your IP or basically host name for the application, which you can then go and visit. In this case, it won't be because something failed, but it's there. It's listening. Migrations need to finish, I guess. Great. So next week, CI/CD, and I guess we'll see you then. Thanks a lot.
That was great stuff, Sam. Thanks for that.
Cheers, Brian.
Bye,
Thank you.
world.